All right, y'all. Here we go again. Back at you one more again with a good special. This special today, we're going to talk about, did Christopher Columbus really discover America? Did Christopher Columbus really discover America? Wow, that's a very, very good question. There are uh, so many stories about the ancients in the Atlantic, right? In the Mediterranean, going beyond the Pillars of Hercules. And the earliest that I can go back is far back as the Greeks. I'm just going to cut straight to the chase. And going back to the Greeks talked about the Phoenicians in like maybe like five or six accounts. It talks about in these Greek accounts, it talk about how the Phoenicians were the first to discover lands beyond the Pillars of Hercules across over the big waters. You know, uh, there's no doubt in my mind that those people were talking about the Americas. Now, some may have said the Canary Islands, the islands of San Thome and Cape Verde and things like that. But it is my belief personally that they were talking about waters way beyond the other side, you know. And we're going to just get off into all of that a little bit later. But there's lots of stories about these uh, many people having pre-Columbian transoceanic contact, right, with America, and I'm talking about going back to the BC era, right? And we're just going to get off into some of this pre-Columbian transoceanic contact, right? I want to talk about the Atlantic voyage of the predecessor of Mansa Musa. We can go to the Wikipedia. I'm gonna just some simple. We ain't gotta go real hard. I think I do got some real heavy stuff in here, but I want to make the stuff simple. Did no, I don't want to go there. As a matter of fact, I want to talk about Columbus. Let's go to Columbus. I got some good stuff there. Let's talk about Christopher Columbus. Are y'all with me there? Hit that subscribe button. I'm on a subscription campaign, and the subscriptions are going up daily. I need like 50,000 subscribers so I can do the kind of work that I really would like to. Columbus. Let's talk a little about Christopher Columbus. Did people come to America before Christopher Columbus? Was people already here before Christopher Columbus? Before we get to all of that, let's just talk about Christopher Columbus and who he was. So we got here an image drawn by Christopher Columbus. I don't want to get off into that because I did research that image is not even an accurate image. But let's go forward. Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus was not his real name. In Italian, he is known as Cristoforo Colombo. So in his Italian name is Cristoforo Colombo, which was long thought to be his birth name, and in Spanish as Cristobal Colon. So his Italian name is Cristoforo Colombo, which is thought to be his birth name, and it was later he later changed his name when he moved to Spain as Cristobal Colon. But he is also referred to by himself and others as Cristaul, Cristovam, Christophorus de Colombo, and even Expaul de Colon. I want to open this up. This is 5 unbelievable facts about Christopher Columbus in the Encyclopedia Britannica. It says Christopher Columbus was not his real name, although Columbus remains a. Now that's a different figure. Let's go back. This is why I said that I talked about these figures, and I never talk about the artist's work. Look at this figure here. This figure, this could not be Christopher Columbus. Let's now we open that back up. Now let's look at this new guy. Now look at this guy. These are two totally different guys, but both of these are images of Christopher Columbus. And this is why I said I have simple evidence, and I said that we will get off into that a little later. And I actually got off into it earlier than I thought. That image so is not Christopher Columbus. All right, Christopher Columbus. Don't need. I'll get off into much more how these images are not Christopher Columbus. So Christopher Columbus, and the name Christopher Columbus was not his real name, right? That is that would be his English name. That's what we would call him in English, and that's what we have translated and later called him to be, right? So although we came across earlier the many different names of Christopher Columbus, and we're going to go through it again, it says that although Columbus remains a prominent historical figure around the world and has been researched and written about for centuries, there are many details of his life that are still a mystery. Keep that in mind, y'all. And one of them is what he looked like. That's one of the most major details of Christopher Columbus's life, because there are some that are saying that Christopher Columbus is black or even Jewish, right? But we'll get off into that a little later. We'll get off into that a little later, okay? Many scholars agree that he was born in Genoa, which is now part of Italy, although there are theories that he may have originated in Spain or even in Poland or Greece. Now, those are all three far, far extremities apart. I mean, for real, how could you mistake that he was born in either France, Poland, or Greece? But I mean, that's because many details of his life are still in mystery. In Italian, he is known as Cristoforo Colombo, which was long thought to be where he was born. That's where he long. That's the oldest place where people have thought for him to have been born at was in his birth name, and he would what to say in Italian. He is known as Cristoforo Colombo, which was long thought to be his birth name, and in Spanish, Cristobal Colon. But he is also referred to by himself and others as Christovam. Let me scroll down here. There is even theory that he adopted the name from a pirate named Columbo. Ask any American school child, and they'll tell you Christopher Columbus ships were named Pina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. However, at least two of these were likely nicknames. So, out of the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, two of those are more likely nicknames, and one of them is the real name of the ship. However, at least two of those were likely nicknames. In Columbus's time, it was the custom in Spain to name ships after saints and to call them by nicknames instead. La Nina was likely the nickname for the ship called Santa Clara. The nickname is thought to have come from the name of the ship's owner, Juan Nino. It is unknown that the Pinta's original name might have been Santa Maria. It is a perfectly saintly name for a third, which also named La, La Galliga. He made four journeys to the New World, Christopher Columbus in 1492. And this here, there are so many details about this man's life. I mean, that is shrouded in mystery. All scholars have recognized this, and it is the scholarly way to look at Christopher Columbus. That much of his life is shrouded in history, but the one part that is not shrouded in history is the journeys that he made to the New World. I say New World because we would be wrong calling it America because it was not called America at that time. They looked at it as a new world, right? And America and the Western Hemisphere has always been seen as the New World. And everything on the other side of the Atlantic, east, is the Old World. So he made four journeys to the New World according to the Britannica. In 1492, Columbus did sail the Ocean Blue. He also sailed he also sailed it in 1493, 1498, and 1502. That's four different journeys. The 1492, the 1493, the 1498, and the 1502. Although many people may have an image of Columbus planting a flag in the lower half of Florida, take a look at the picture over here to the right here. The landing of Columbus, this is supposed to have thought to have been in the lower half of Florida, right? Although many people may have an image of Columbus planting a flag in the lower half of Florida, he really only explored a small area of the Caribbean, just a small area, which included the Bahamas, Cuba, and Jamaica, and the parts of Central America. Let's scroll down here. I like this information here. Uh, did his remain? Excuse me. His remains did about as much traveling as he did. Okay, so we're going to talk about the remains of Christopher Columbus here, it appears. I'm just doing some old study over here, and the best place to do it is on YouTube, right? You know, come across some old good old information. It says in the Britannica that his remains did about as much traveling as he did. And after Columbus died in 1506, he was buried in Valladolid, Spain. Valladolid, Spain. Okay. So after Columbus died in 1506, he was buried in Valladolid, Spain. 3 years later, his remains were taken to his family's mausoleum, which was in Seville. In 1542, in accordance with the will of his son Diego Columbus, remains were transferred to Santo Domingo, Hispaniola, now in the Dominican Republic. Okay, so now Christopher Columbus's remains is in the Dominican Republic. I got to read that again. That's unbelievable. After Columbus died in 1506, he was buried in Valladolid 3 years later. Columbus's remains were transferred to Santo Domingo, Hispaniola, now in the Dominican Republic. And this was done according to the will of his son Diaglo. Right where they are today. Hispaniola was ceded to France by Spain, and in 1795, Columbus' bones were moved again to Havana, Cuba. Wow. So they not there. They moved from there to Cuba. More than 100 years later, I'm learning not to read too much into that. Oh my goodness. So 100 years later, and now this is new. This is new for me. This is something. So Columbus' remains were transferred to Santo Domingo, Hispaniola, now in the Dominican Republic. Hispaniola was ceded to France by Spain, and in 1795, Columbus's bones were moved to Havana, Cuba. More than 100 years later, they were shipped back across the Atlantic and returned to Seville in 1898. Wow. His remains probably did more traveling than he did, because I think we got 4 trips. We got 4 journeys of him living, and we got like 5 of them here, it appears. 4 or 5 of them here, it appears. Uh, in his death. He maybe was not great at math. I could about believe that, and maybe even reading either, and even understanding, because I believe it was said that he thought that he was in India. So his calculations certainly was off, and that's very mathematical. It says at the time Columbus made his famous journey, a lot of overseas travels was guesswork. That exact size of the planet Earth was unknown. Okay. And that pretty much, I was pretty much going there. Yep, it's going right. Okay. It says at the time Columbus made his famous journey, a lot of overseas travels was guesswork. Okay. The exact size of the planet Earth was unknown, and there were 2 main ways of measuring degrees of latitude. The method developed by the Greek philosopher Posidonius, and the method developed by the medieval Arabs. So those were the two ways of measuring the latitudes. In making his own calculations, Columbus argued that the circumference yielded by both methods were the same, ignoring or forgetting that Arab miles were longer than Roman miles. Wow. So it couldn't have been the same. So that would have thrown his calculation and his mathematics all the way off. His whole understanding of everything, quite honestly. He says using that data, which ultimately rendered the planet about 25% smaller, he assured his backers that his small wooden ships could make it from Spain to Japan in 30 days. That's a big stretch, brother. Some scholars think Columbus willfully misrepresented the distance, but the journey is still out. And just learn a little something about Christopher Columbus here. We might be done here. Oh, the Merchant of Death. It said noble controversies go all the way back to the prize's founder. Oh, we're talking about something else right here. Yeah, so I guess we're done with the Columbus. So with that, we can back up out of there. Go back here. We can stop sharing that. I'm gonna see what else we got here. Some of these readings. We want to see that why. I mean, do they say that Christopher Columbus discovered America? Why are they holding fast to that? And so much is shrouded in mystery about this man's life. I mean, so they don't even know where he was born. They don't know whether he was white, whether he was black. They don't know whether he was Portuguese, Spanish, Jewish, Greek, or even Italian. Uh so we talked about Christopher Columbus. And Christopher Columbus, what we have to understand is that he made his emergence on the world stage by way of Spain, right? And Portugal. Okay. And these lands prior to 1492 was dominated by Phoenicians, Arabs, Egyptians, Jews, right? Who else? Phoenicians, Canaanites, and many other northern Afrikaners. We know that Africans has been in Spain since 1075 BC. We do know that much, right? And we do know that in the 7th century, there was a wave of Africans that went into Spain. And many believe, according to the cartouches, that it was King Tariq, also known as King Tariq, or Taharka, right? To King Taharka. It has something to do with him and Hezekiah and things of that nature. There's a biblical text I was just reading today in the book of Isaiah, but I'm not going to go to that. They talked about how the Israelites wanted to go into Egypt and live amongst the Egyptians and do what the Egyptians was doing, and the Egyptians was trying to get up out of there. Many of them anyway. Uh, Let me share my screen here. Uh, I want to talk about this man by the name of Aru. His name is Mansa Abu Bakari. Mansa Aru Bakari Kita. Let me share my screen here. I'm gonna just go through something real quick. Just simple Wikipedia accounts where we can learn a lot of stuff, right? So let's look at the no, I don't want to go there first. Well, we're gonna since we're here, we're gonna deal with that because we're talking about the Africans that came into Spain, right, and that had dominated Spain, and we talking about 1075. You're talking about around 702, and we're also talking like 711 when Tariq, the other Tariq, right, took back Spain in 711. So you had two Tariqs. One of them is Tariqa or Taharika, right, from where the name Tariq comes from. Tariq is short for Taharika, right? So the second Tariq in 711 was actually, if you really understood linguistics and what was really going on, the second Tariqa used Islam, right, in the same way and fashion that Hezekiah and Taharka used their paradigm, and they both went and took back Spain because Spain originally, we have documents going back to at least 1075 to the first flood where Africans dominated Spain. So going back from at least 1075 to 1492, it was Africans, Jews, Canaanites, people that were Hamites and Shemite, Muslims, people, Hagarenes, Saracens, which all of these people, the most ancient depictions and documents record these people as a dark hued or a black people or an African people is really what I want to say. I don't want to say dark hued. I don't want to say black. I really want to say an African people, understanding that today there's all different types of shades and hues in Africa, as well as it always has been, as well as it's always going to be. Right. So I'm going right here to this transatlantic voyage. I want to blow the page up here. What was it? The transatlantic voyage, right? Of the predecessor of Mansa Musa. We're going to talk about this. It's in 1324, while staying in Cairo during the Hajj, Mansa Musa, the ruler of the Mali Empire, told the Egyptian official whom he had befriended that he had come to rule when his predecessor led a large fleet in an attempt to cross the Atlantic Ocean, and he never returned. So in 1324, while staying in Cairo, Mansa Musa was going there for the Hajj, and he was talking to a Malian emperor. He told him about how he became emperor, about how his predecessor took a large fleet across the Atlantic Ocean and never returned. This account, recorded by the Arab historian Al Umari, Al Amari, So Al-Amadi is where this account comes from about Mansa Musa predecessors coming across the Atlantic. And Al-Amadi has attracted considerable interest and speculation as a possible instance of pre-Columbian transoceanic contact. Now, what is pre-Columbian transoceanic contact? We're going to just look off into that real quick. Pre-Columbian transatlantic oceanic contact theories, right? It says here the pre-Columbian. Oops, I think I gotta. Yeah, it says here the pre-Columbian transoceanic contact theories are speculative theories, which propose that people visits to America. Possible interactions with the indigenous peoples of the Americas, or both, were made by people from Africa, Asia, Europe, or Oceania prior to Christopher Columbus's first voyage to the Caribbean in 1492. Said during any part of the pre-Columbian or during any part of the pre-Columbian era, studies between 2004 and 2009 suggest the possibility that the earliest human migrations to the Americas may have been made by a boat from Beringia, talking about the Berings, like the Bering Strait area, maybe. Might been taken by boat from Beringia and traveled down the Pacific coast. Yeah, that's what they're talking about. Contemporary with the possibly, contemporary with and possibly predating land migrations over the Beringia land bridge. That's the Bering Straits, what we know as the Bering Straits, which during the glacial periods join today are Siberia and Alaska. Whether transoceanic travels occurred during the historic period resulted in pre-Columbian contact between the settled American people and voyages from the continent is vigorously debated. Yeah, I see, and it's still debated years and years later. It says only a few cases of pre-Columbian contact are widely accepted by mainstream scientists and scholars. Yupik and Aleut people resided on both sides of the Bering Straits, had frequent contact with each other, and Eurasian trade goods have been discovered in archaeological sites in Alaska. The Ox Meadows in Newfoundland, which preceded Columbus's arrival in the Americas by some 500 years, recount genetic studies have also suggested that some eastern Polynesian populations have admixture from coastal western South American peoples uh, with an estimated date of contact around 1200 1200 CE. So this is saying that we have genetic contacts that said that they can go back to 1200 CE, dealing with European people like Scandinavians, Norse, uh, people like from Greenland and stuff like that. So it says scientific and scholarly responses to other claims of post-history pre-Columbian transoceanic contact have varied. So scientific and scholarly responses to others have in history, pre-Columbian trend, has varied. Some of these claims are examined as reputable, peer-reviewed sources. So I'm just lost. Uh, how can these teachers not be accepted? How? I don't get it. It says here the scientific and scholarly responses to other claims of post history, pre Columbian transoceanic contacts have varied, right? I see how they can vary, but some of these claims are examined in reputable peer review works. I mean, I get that, but some of them are not, right? And it says many others are based on circumstantial and ambiguous interpretations of archaeological evidence. So they're saying that we actually have peer reviewed works, and some of the peer reviewed works on pre Columbian contact, even though they're peer reviewed, they have been. No, that ain't what he's saying. He said some of these claims are examined in reputable peer review sources. Oh, okay. Right. I was right the first time. It says some of the claims of these pre oceanic contacts have been examined in reputable, meaning that people have, there's a reputation for it, but people have also refuted these peer review works. And if this is not what he's saying, I know that they have. Because all theories, right, are subject to the criteria of falsifiability. Many others are based on circumstantial and ambiguous interpretations of archaeological evidence. The discovery of alleged out of place artifacts, artificial cultural comparisons, comments in historical documents, or narrative truths, they have been dismissed as fringe science, pseudo archaeology, and pseudoscience. Wow. So let me get back to this here. So you got the claims of Polynesian and a Melanesian and Australasian contact. So if we have these claims, right? He said scientific and scholarly responses to other claims of post history pre Columbian contact have varied. Some of these claims are examined in reputable peer reviewed works. I can't let that get out of my head. They have been examined and they're reputable. These works have a reputation, and many have tried to refute it. We'll talk about the genetic studies, right, between the Peloponnesian, Melanesian, and Australasian contact between 2007 2009. Geneticist Eric Thorsby and colleagues published two studies in tissue antigens in tissue antigens that evidence in Amerindian genetics contributed to human populations on Easter Island. Determining that it was probably introduced before European discovery of the island. In 2014, geneticist Anno Safro Malaspina of the Center of Geogenetics at the University of Copenhagen published a study in Current Biology that found human genetic evidence or contact between the population of Easter Island and the South American. Hmm. So between I'm trying to figure out which is the best here to get to this the part that I'm trying to get to. Claims of Polynesian. Let's say between 2007 2009. Uh, says okay. That was just something to just ponder upon. I'm just stuck because they're saying that the Easter Islands, right? They have done genetic studies about evidence of an Indian population in the Easter Islands, determining that it was probably introduced before European discovery of the island. Okay, in 2014, geneticist Anno Sapino Malaspinius of the Center for Geogenetics at the University of Copenhagen published a study in Current Biology that found human genetic evidence of contact between the populations of the Easter Islands in South America, dating to approximately 600 years ago, around 1400s. Wow. And in 2017, a comprehensive genome study found no Native Amerindian admixture in pre or post European contact individuals. So they don't really find no Indian blood or no European blood prior. So you got some studies that are saying that they found genetic sources that have contact. It says that I'm trying to make sense of this. In 2014, okay, she published a study in the current biology that they found genetic evidence of contact. Right, so they did find genetic evidence of contact in the populations of the Easter Islands in South America. Okay, dating until about 600 years ago. And in 2017, a comprehensive genome study found no Native American admixture of post-European contact individuals. That is kind of confusing. So I'm trying. I had to have a pause there because I had to make sense of that. But again, you have the criteria of falsifiability, which is the cause of all of that. That was just a mind boggler for me, because for every theory, there's always a theory. Your theory has to be falsifiable to where it can be debunked. And that's what these guys are doing. They're debunking each other's theories, and it just wasn't making sense to me. But it does now that I understand that that's what science is all about. It says two remains of Botocudo people, a term used to refer to Native Americans who lived in the interior of Brazil that spoke macro macro G languages, were found in research published in 2013 to have been members of the mitochondrial haplogroup B4A1A1, which is normally found amongst the Polynesians and other subgroups of Austronesians. This was based on an analysis of 14 skulls. Two belong to B4A1A1, which 12 belong to the subclade of mitochondrial DNA haplogroup C1. Common amongst Native Americans, the research team examined various scenarios, none of which they could say for certain were correct. They dismissed the scenario on direct contact in prehistory between Polynesia and Brazil as to likely be seriously entertained. Okay. So basically, they're talking about the genetic studies of Polynesian, Melanesian, and Austronesian contacts. So as we jump down to 2020 studies, Nature found that populations in Mangraviera, Mangraviera, uh, Marquesas, and Pallister Islands and Easter Islands had genetic mixture from indigenous populations of South America with the DNA contemporary populations of the Zenus people in the Pacific coast of Colombia, being the closest match. Wow. With this type of evidence, we can't say that Christopher Columbus was the first one to really discover the Americas. We just can't say this type of stuff. You got the sweet potato had a food crop native to the Americas, was widespread in Polynesia by the time European explorers first reached the Pacific. So by the time Europeans came here, the sweet potato was already here. So in his mind, it was already here, and it may have been here forever, as far as he knows. But he don't know that maybe another group of people may have brought that here from the places where that potato grew. It says sweet potatoes has been radiocarbon dated to 1000 BC in the Cook Islands. Hmm. It's a current thinking. It's a current thinking is that it was brought from Central Polynesia. Remember, I was saying a lot of people think that the sweet potato was brought, or the sweet potato was brought from different other people that was making their ways over here, and it also possible that the plant floated across the ocean after being discarded from the cargo of a boat. According to the tripartite hypothesis, the tripartite hypothesis, phylogenetic analysis support at least two separate instructions of sweet potatoes from South America into introductions, excuse me, two separate introductions of sweet potatoes from South America into Polynesia, including one before and after European contact. Wow. However, most scholars assert that the sweet potato arrived in Polynesia sometime around 100,000 years ago, long before humans ventured into this part of the world. How do you know? How do we know that humans ventured into this part of the world? You know, just because we came over here, we assume that everyone else came over here. How do we know that the people that were here was not already here already? I know because when we came here, there was people already here before we came. So we can't assume that there was no people here before we of Christopher Columbus came to America. So it says Dutch linguist and specialist in Amerindian languages, William Adler and Peter Meshkin have suggested that the word for sweet potato is shared by Polynesian language and languages of South America. Proto-Polynesian Kumala. Compare Easter Island Kumara, Hawaiian Ola, and the Maori Chimera, even though the protoform is constructed above, apparent cognates outside Eastern Polynesian are either definitely borrowed from Eastern Polynesian languages or regular, calling Proto-Polynesian status and age into question, may be connected with a dialect Quechua and Aymara, Kumara. Most Quechua dialects actually use Pichu instead, but Comal was attested at extinct Canaan language. Not Canaan, Canary, attested an extinct Canary language on the coast of which is now Ecuador in 1582. Adelar and Mashkin asserts that the similarity in the word for sweet potato constitute near proof of incidental contact between inhabitants of the Andean region and the South Pacific. The authors argue that the presence of the word for sweet potato suggests sporadic contact between Polynesian and South America, but not necessarily migrations. With all of this here evidence in Wikipedia, it's very, very hard to just say that there's no evidence that no one discovered America prior to the Portuguese and the Spaniards. Let's look up physical anthropology. Okay, I think there was some more stuff in here I want. Okay, physical anthropology. Uh, Claim of an East Asian contact. That's what we want to go to. I don't want to get too far off into genetics. Okay, claims of contact with Ecuador. In 2013, genetic studies suggest the possibility or contact between Ecuador and East Asia that would have happened no earlier than 6,000 years ago, around 4,000 BC. Uh, so claims of contact with the Ecuador, a genetic study suggests possible contact between Ecuador and Asia, and this could have happened around 6,000 years ago, right? Then we got claims of a Chinese contact. Some researchers argue that the Olmec civilization came into existence with the help of Chinese refugees, possibly at the end of the Shang dynasty. The Shang dynasty was said to have been a black or an Africoid type of family with dealing in genetics and haplogroups and stuff like that. So in 1995, Betty Meggers. Wow, y'all have to excuse me. I keep falling out of the studio, man. This is crazy. Anyway, what up, brother Chop? Peace and grace to you, brother. The warrior for the most high power. No, he comes over here intentionally because he said himself he came to recapture Jerusalem. America is the true old world. Yeah, but when he came here, he had it was already people here. You know, wow, how did I lose that? All that information I just had. Goodness. I'm gonna see if I can pull it back up. I'm gonna see if I can pull it back up. Oh boy. I should be able to pull it back up. Uh well, I'm gonna go here. So I just went off in there in the Britannica to just show y'all all of the evidence, and my computer just acting silly today. But show y'all all of the evidence of there is evidence that people came here before Columbus. Then we got the Atlantic voyage of the predecessor. This is the one I wanted to get off into, of the predecessor of Mansa Musa. It says in 1324, while staying in Cairo during the Hajj, Mansa Musa, the ruler of Mali, the Mali Empire, told the Egyptian official whom he had befriended that he had come to rule when the predecessor led a large fleet. Oh, it's not sharing my screen. Oh, Lord, help us on this day. We're going to get it together, people. There we go. There it go. Popped up. So it says that the Atlantic it's going to get greater later, people. We're just going through all of this stuff. Atlantic voyage of the predecessor of Mansa Musa in 1324. While staying in Cairo during the Hajj, Mansa Musa, the ruler of the Mali Empire, told, is it sharing? Yeah, okay, it's sharing. Uh, Let me put some of these up here while we doing this. Okay, so we got the Mansa Musa. While he went to Egypt, he told one of the officials there that he had became friends with that when his predecessor led a large fleet across the Atlantic Ocean. And this account was recorded by the Arab historian Al Umari, has attracted considerable interest in the speculation as a possible instance of pre-Columbian oceanic contact. Okay, now we're back there. The voyage is popularly attributed to a Mansa Abu Bakr, but no such Mansa ever reigned, right? It said that no such Mansa ever reigned. So he's saying that Mansa Abu Bakr never really existed. Rather, the voyage is inferred to have been undertaken by Mansa Mohammed Ibn Q. The precise date for the suggested voyage is unknown, thought though it is interpreted to have occurred around 1311 or 1312, because I read around 1311. The year Mansa Musa is inferred to have become Mansa. No clear evidence of the fate of the voyage has been found. So if there's no evidence of the fate of the voyage, we don't know whether they got swooped up in a whirlwind, whether they drowned, right? We don't know whether they were shipwrecked in different parts of the Western Hemisphere. We just don't know. So when we can say that we don't know, we surely can't say that they didn't make contact over here. That's one thing we can't say, and that's the thing that most scholars are keep trying to say. And in doing that, they're ignoring the historical accounts. You got Mansa Musa's account. Mansa Musa stayed in Cairo for 3 months, and that's in 1324, while en route to Mecca for the Hajj. While there, he befriended an emir named Abu al Hassan Ali ibn Imar Hajib. Abu al Hassan Ali ibn Amar Hajib, who was the governor of the district of Cairo that Musa was staying in. Ibn Imar Hajib later recounted to the scholar Al Umari what he had learned of Mali from his conversation with Musa. Uh, in one such conversation, Ibn Umar Hajib asked had asked Musa how he became king, and Musa replied, "We belong to the house which hands on the kingship by inheritance. The king who was my predecessor did not believe that it was impossible to discover the farthest limit of the Atlantic Ocean and wished vehemently to do so. So he equipped 200 ships, filled them with men, and the same number equipped with gold, water, and provisions enough to last them for years, and said to the men disputed to lead them, do not return until you reach the end of your provisions and water give or your water give out and or your water give out. They departed on a long time and a long time passed before someone came back. Then one ship returned, and we asked the captain what news they brought. He said, "Yes, O Sultan, we traveled for a long time until there appeared in the ocean sea, as it were, a river with a powerful current, like a whirlwind, like sort of, I'm guessing. Mine, or some type of a river with a small, powerful current. Mine was the last of those ships." He said the other ships went on ahead, but when they reached that place, they did not return, and no more was seen of them. And we do not know what became of them. As for me, I went about at once and did not enter that river, but the Sultan disbelieved them. Then the Sultan got ready 200 ships, 1,000 for himself and the men whom he took with him, and 1,000 for water. So you talking about he took 2,000 ships and 1,000 for himself and the men whom, so that's 3,000, right? And he took with him 100. That's 4,000 ships. And he left me deputized for him and embarked on the Atlantic Ocean with the men. That was the last time we saw him and all those who were with him. And so I became king on my right. So that's how Mansa Musa became the king. Mansa Musa became the king because one of his ancestors sent a fleet out, a large fleet with hundreds of boats, like, and hundreds, large fleets. You talk about 400 or 500 boats, maybe, at least. And then they didn't come back. So he sent them back 4,000 boats this time, and this time he went with them, and he did not come back. And we never knew whatever happened of Al-Bukhari, or the Muhammad Q, right? So Al-Umari account of this conversation is the only account of this voyage, and it is not mentioned by medieval historian Arabs or West African oral tradition. Nonetheless, the possibility of such voyage has been taken seriously by several historians, and it should, because this is a historical account. Identity of Musa's predecessor. The identity of Mansa Musa response excuse me, the Mansa, because Mansa means king. Identity of the Mansa responsible for the voyage has been subject to some confusion. Al Umari's record of Musa's account does not mention the Mansa's name, giving no indication of his identity other than he was Mansa's predecessor. According to the Arab historian Ibn Khaldun, writing several decades later, Mansa's predecessor as Mansa was Muhammad ibn Q. As such, several historians have attributed the voyage to Mansa Muhammad. So Mansa Muhammad is the guy who is said really to be Abu Bakr. Or Abu Bakr, they're saying, is not to have existed, but there is record of Abu Bakr, which is the daughter of Marty Jata, right, right here. And then we have a Abu Bakr over here in the Megan Khan Fatah line, right, which is a direct predecessor of Mansa Musa. It say Mindi Bori, also known as Mindi Bakari. Mindi Bori, also known as Mindi Bakari, and known in Arabic as Abu Baraka, is a heroic figure in Mandean oral tradition. He was involved in the founding of the Malian Empire. He was the brother and right hand man of Sunjata, the founder of the empire, and served as the empress Kenkoru. We're not going to get off in all of that there. This is just a little breakdown of that. But it says many sources called Mansa in question Abu Bakr, right? However, the conclusion of Mansa Musa in the list of Malian rulers is an error that originated in the translation of Ibn Khaldun's text. So when we giving you the tools to be able to go back and look at the text and to be able to point out the errors. So Ibn Khaldun's text had errors in it. Many sources call the Mansa in question about Abu Bakr. All right. However, the conclusion of a Mansa Abu Bakr in the list of Malian rulers is an error that originated in mistranslation of Ibn Khaldun's text by the 19th century historian Baron D. Slane. So it's really not even as much a problem with Ibn Khaldun as much as it was with the European historians' translation, whom in person is Baron D. Slane. D. Slane translated Ibn Khaldun as saying that the kinship passed from Muhammad to Abu Bakr, then Musa. However, in the original Arabic text, Abu Bakr is only mentioned in his role as the progenitor of Mansa Musa's lineage, not as the ruler. And Abu Bakr in question was the brother of Sanjata, the founder of the Mali Empire, and apparently never himself ruled. Wow. Another figure named Abu Bakr did rule as Mansa, but he was the predecessor of Sakura and not Mansa. Additionally, some historians have suggested, without elaboration, that the voyage should be attributed to Mansa Q, who was the father and predecessor of Muhammad Q, according to Ibn Khaldun. So one of these Arab, whom I would say actually was not Arab, but Africans who converted to Islam, one of these African Muslims were the first, were amongst the first that we have documented. Oh, Lordy, to have come to the Americas. You have the interpretation. It said no uncontroversial evidence for pre-Columbian contact between Africa and the Americas has ever been found. I beg to differ with that. Well, he said uncontroversial. Okay, he didn't say there was no evidence. So there is evidence, and all of the evidence is controversial. I will agree with that. So it says no controversial evidence of pre-Columbian contact between Africa and the Americas has ever been found. Mind you, that don't mean that no evidence of pre-Columbian contact between America and Africa has never been found. It's no controversial evidence. All the evidence seemed to bring controversy for some reason or another. It says, regardless of whether any of the Malian ships ever reached the Americas, they apparently never returned to Africa, and there were not any long-term economic consequences of the voyage. The river on the sea described by the survivor of the first expedition is presumably the Canary Islands. Remember I told you? A lot of people thought that those lands that a lot of people was talking about was the Canary Islands. Right? It says the rivers on the sea described by the survivors of the first expedition is presumably the Canary Islands. So most of the people in the first expedition probably stayed there and got stuck on the Canary Islands. What is the source for this? Who is the source for this? Let me read that source. It's a guy by the name of Thornton in a book that he wrote in 2012 called The Inclusion of This Fact. Said the inclusion of this fact in Mansa's accounts indicate that Mansa had some awareness of the oceanographic conditions of the open Atlantic. Said the Canary Current flows from West Africa to the Americas, which would have facilitated travel from Africa to the Americas, but prevented it in the opposite direction. Ivan van Sertima and Malian researcher Gayoso de Diawara, which are two black men, right? I believe Gayoso Diawara is black because Diawara is an African word, right? I think Gyasol is too. But Ivan van Sertima and Malian research, I'm going to look up Gyasol Diawara. We might can do it here on this program. Ivan van Sertima and Malian researcher Gyasol Diawara proposed that the voyage reached the New World. Ivan van Sertima is certain of it. I'm not familiar with the work of Gyasol Diawara, and I want to look at that. We may have to do a part 2 on this. So we got Ivan van Sertima and the Malian researcher Gyasol Diawara proposed that the voyage researched the New World. Ivan Van Sertima cites the abstract of Columbus's voyage made by Bartholomew de las Casas, according to which the purpose of Columbus's third visit was to test both the claims of King John II of Portugal that canoes had been found, which set out from the coast of Guyana west and sailed to the west with merchandise as well as claims metal as claims of the native inhabitants of the Caribbean islands of Hispaniola. So he's saying that Bartholomew de las Casas uh, Bartholomew de las Casas, King John II of Portugal. He said that these guys talked about how there were canoes found over here in the Western Hemisphere. We don't have these canoes, but there's record of these canoes in the Western Hemisphere that they sailed from the coast of Guyana. So there is record. We do have records, right? But it's not. We do have evidence, but the evidence is controversial. People can argue it, right? They say, and sailed to the west with merchants, as well as the claims of the native inhabitants of the Caribbean islands of Hispaniola, that from the south and the southeast had come black people whose spears were made of metal called guanine or guinin, right? From which it was found that of 32 parts, 18 were gold, 6 were silver, and 8 were copper. However, scholars dispute evidence of any such voyage region of America. And there are insufficient evidentiary grounds to suppose that there has been contact between Africa and the New World at any point of pre-Columbian era. Now, that's the part that I am having a problem with. He said, he said the scholars, dispute this evidence, right? And that he said that they say that there's insufficient evidentiary grounds to suppose these cases that Africans came to the New World, that Muslims, that, anybody prior to Columbus came over here. So we got Heslop Vieira et al. Noted in peculiar that no genuine African contact has ever been found in a controlled archaeological excavation in the New World. Carl Toole, a professor at UC Riverside, expanding in where we at here. I'm trying to process this stuff here. So we got Ivan Van Sertima has had all types of evidence, colossal heads. Ivan Van Sertima argued about the spears, right? and the evidence of canoes claimed by King John II. It's a lot of ignoring of historical evidence, right? Now, archaeological evidence, this stuff we don't have, but the historical account that we have. So he talked about that the canoes had been found which set out from the coast of Guinea, West Africa, and sailed to the west with merchandise, as well as the claims of native inhabitants of the Caribbean islands of Hispaniola, and that from the south and from the southeast had come black people whose spears were made of a metal called guanine. Guanine is gold, from which it was found that 32 parts, 18 were gold, 6 were silver, and 8 copper. However, scholars dispute this evidence of any such voyage reaching the Americas, and that there are insufficient evidentiary grounds to suppose there has been contact between Africa and the New World, and that was point at any point during the Caribbean pre-Columbian era. I have to try to look through some of this, try to vet some of this to try to make it quicker and get down through here. So you got the legacy of Mansa Musa himself appeared to be considered his predecessor's plan to be impractical. I guess so. He didn't try to make the voyage himself. Say the main point he appears to have been trying to make is Ibn Amir Hajib is that the predecessor's failed voyage paved the way for him to become the king. So I guess the only reason why him telling that story, he was saying, was for to let him know how he became king, not to say that blacks or Africans or Muslims discovered America. And we get that part. So you got uh go back to share my screen. Uh okay. Nope, I can't share that. Let me see. Let me see what I can find over here. Okay, here we go. This will be the last one. Okay. Okay, the theory of the Phoenicians discovering the Americas. We're going to share that one. Did the Phoenicians discover the Americas? We look up Wikipedia here. It says, did the Phoenicians discover the Americas? The theory of the Phoenician discovery of the Americas suggests that the earliest Old World contact with the Americas was not with Columbus or the Norse, but with the Phoenicians, or ultimately other Semitic people in the first millennium BCE. Now, these Phoenician people or these Canaanite people would have been the ancestors or at least lived in close proximity to North Africa, or the area that Mansa Musa ruled. Hold on for 1 second here. Give me 1 second. I gotta go over here and get me a swig of water real quick. The mouth is getting pretty dry. Okay, back at the ranch. So we have Phoenician accounts of slavery. I'm not slavery. Just coming to America. Oh boy, how did slavery become synonymous with America in that sense? So we have the theory of Phoenician discovery of the Americas. This is just simple Wikipedia checks. Okay, Saragossa may have been known to earlier mariners. The Sargasso Sea, that's the word. Sargasso. The Sargasso Sea is a region of the Atlantic Ocean. As we can see right here, this is right. See, this is the head of Africa, the western coast of Africa, right here. Right? And the Sargasso Sea is this area right here, which is directly, this is that current, see, that that Mansa Musa's predecessors were caught up in, the Sargasso Sea. And you can see right here, it lies right, it'll ship you, it'll take you, the current will take you, the current, if you went out to the Atlantic Ocean far enough, the current would automatically, right, in the Sargasso Sea, will automatically take you to North America. First, by way, you would first end up in the South down here in the islands, right? And you can see, just like how it did Columbus and them on their voyage. It all makes sense, but I don't see why people want to ignore these ancient accounts. This stuff is like mind-boggling, I have to just sit back here and it stuns me, every time I go over this stuff. So we got the Sargasso Sea. Okay, you got Postumius Refius Festivus Savinius was a Latin writer of the 4th century. He was a native of Etruria, from the distinguished family of the Rufifesti. Okay, discoveries, but with the Phoenicians, right, and the Semitic people of the 1st century. Okay, so the Sargasso Sea may have been known to earlier mariners, right? And your mariners were your seamen, your sailors, your seafarers. The Sargasso Sea, it may have been known to earlier mariners as the poem of Martima. Okay, so we're going to learn about Auto Martima. Auto Martima is a poem written by Avanius, claimed to contain borrowings from the 6th century BC Masilute Periplus. The Masilute Periplus. This poeticized periplus resulted in an anachronic, non-fictional account of the coastal regions of the known world. His editor, Andre Barthelot, demonstrated that Vestala's land measurements were derived from Roman itineraries, but inverted some sequences. Barthelot remarks of some names of the Hispanic coast, again, to the Americas. So this old poem called the Ora Maritima, right? The Ora Maritima. It's an old poem that talked about these lands already. It talked about the Sargasso Sea, but inverted some sequences. Uh, Barthelot remarked of some names on the Hispanic coast. The the omission of Imperium, contrasting largely with the names of Tarragon and Barcelona. I had to stop and let this stuff sink in, y'all, because I'm the type of guy that likes to commit this stuff to memory. In case the day come where I have to speak it without the pages in front of me. It say the Tarragon in Barcelona may characterize the methods of Arrhenius, who searches archaic documents and mingles his searches of them with the impressions of an official of the 4th century A.D. Ora Maritima was the work for the reader rather than the traveler, where the 4th century present intrudes largely in the mention of cities at the time abandoned, like the legendary Ophioso. More recent scholars have amended to credulous reliance on Arrhenius' accuracy. So he's saying that many scholars have amended to the credulous, meaning to the belief, like they really rely on Arrhenius' accuracy. It says that historian archaeologist Adolf Scorton, another ancient chief text cited by Arrhenius is the Periplus of Hamlico. Oh my goodness. There we go. There we go. Wow. So more recent scholars have embedded to credulous reliance on the Arrhenius accuracy of his editor. The historian archaeologist Adolf Skitchen. Another ancient chief text cited by Arrhenius is the Periplus of Hamlico, the description of a Punic expedition through the coast of Western Europe, which took place at the same time of the circumnavigation of Africa by Hanno in 500 BC. And it was said that Hamlico and Hanno both had traveled the whole darn globe and even to the Western hemispheres. So this all goes back to Phoenician stories, right? Phoenician theories of the discovery of America. These are the oldest stories that you're going to find, and they're all in relation to these people in Western and Northern Africa coming from the Mediterranean or off the western coast of Africa into the Americas. So we have here, I just like to read that. It says the Sargasso Sea may have been known to earlier mariners as the poem of Aura Maritima by the late 4th century Arthur Rufus Festus Evenius, and he described portions of the Atlantic as being covered with seaweed, citing a now lost account of the 5th century Carthaginian navigator Hamilco and Hanno, the navigator. In the late 18th century, a number of people speculated on the origins of the petroglyphs on Dighton's Rock in Berkeley, Massachusetts. Ezra cites the present Ezra cites then president of Yale College believed them to be Hebrew. Now, this was the president of Yale College, the then president, Ezra Stiles, that's his name. Ezra Stiles, then president of Yale College, believed them to be Hebrew. Antoine Court de Gabelin argues in Le Monde Primitive, the Primeval World, that's the name of the book that he made this argument in, that they commemorated an ancient visit to the East Coast by a group of sailors from Carthage. Did not just say that. And that's all the Hannibal, Hannibal as well. Hannibal, Hanno, a navigator, as well as Abu Barca and Muhammad Q. All of those people have known about these worlds for a very, very long time, right? And in the 19th century, belief in an Israelite visit to America became part of Mormonism. You have a man by the name of Ross T. Christensen has pronounced the theory that the Amalekites in the Book of Mormon were largely Phoenician in their ethnic origin. In an 1871 book, Ancient America, Don Dennison Baldwin repeats the same of the argument given for the Phoenician visit to America, but ultimately refutes them, saying, if it were true that the civilization found in Mexico and Central America came from people of the Phoenician race, it would be true that they built in America as they never built anywhere else, that they established a language here radically unlike their own, and that they used a style of writing totally different from that which they carried into every region occupied by their colonies. All the forms of alphabetical writing used at present in Europe and Southwestern Asia come directly and indirectly from an ancient invented by the race of which the Phoenicians belong. So he said all of the forms of alphabetical writing used at present in Europe and in Southwest Asia come directly from the ancient invented by the Phoenicians. Basically, all of the alphabets that we have come from the Phoenicians, and that they have traced a common relationship which can be easily detected. Now, the writing of the inscription at Palenque, Copain, and elsewhere in the ruins has no more relatedness to the Phoenician than to the Chinese writing. It has not a single characteristic that can be called Phoenician any more than the language of the inscription or the style of architecture which is associated. Therefore, we cannot reasonably suppose this American civilization was originated by people of the Phoenician race. So we have alleged artifacts, right, of Phoenician contact to the Americas. And then it said 1872, some stone, a 1870, in 72, a stone inscribed in Phoenician writing, I need to get my glasses, was allegedly discovered in Paraíba, Brazil. Okay, so a stone in Phoenician writing was discovered in Paraíba, Brazil. Let's see, is that in the northern areas? Yep. Let's see where this area is at. Yep, it would be right there in the area that from the Saragossa current would have swooped them right there. It would have swooped them right there. It would have took them directly. It would have took them there without a motor, without a sail. It would have just sailed them right there. If they would have had a sail on the boat, they really would have sailed right there, right? So we see where the Paribia, right, or where the Paraíba of Brazil is, right? And these are right where those heads, when you go study Ivan Van Sertima's work, we go back to the Paraíba. We got a phone call here. Let us answer this phone call. Oh, I guess it hung up. So we talking about Paraíba, Brazil, and this particular area in Paraíba, is the area where Ivan Van Sertima talked a lot about these Phoenicians. You know, where these heads, these colossal Olmec heads were found. So, and that was a good argument. I like the argument that John Dennison Baldwin represented because, I mean, and I've always posed that question to where if these people were really Phoenicians, then how come there is no relation between the Phoenician and the Canaanite culture, language, or any of these things? Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How you?
All right, this is Brother Tori. I'm live and on air. You live on air with us. Everything good?
Yeah, everything good, man. I was just, I'm at work right now, and I was just thinking about you. Just wanted to see how you was doing.
Oh yeah, I'm doing a show called the Christopher Columbus Discovered America, and you called right in the mix of it. That's good that you thought about the elder. Tell the listening audience how you doing.
You said what?
Yeah, you live with me. Tell the listening audience how you doing.
I'm doing good. Peace and blessings to the audience. How's everybody doing today?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I don't think Christopher Columbus didn't discover America, man. It was already people here when he came. So there's no way he could have discovered it.
I mean, the most daunting research that we're coming across, man, is that the Phoenicians, basically our ancestors, the Canaanite Israelite influence, is the oldest records that we have so far.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, so we're pretty much. Yeah, so we're all pretty much mixed.
Yeah, Africans itself are mixed, period. Because I mean, all you got that big old landmass right there. You mean to tell me, after all these years, these people have not interacted with each other? That's crazy. You know, that's why the E branches is so large in Western Africa. You know, but yeah, Christopher Columbus didn't discover this place, man. And the answer to the Christopher Columbus discover America, we're finding out largely that the answer is no. But what is startling to me, and sometimes it just stops me. You know, I'm just thinking of the information, and it just pulverizes me. That the oldest records. Now we have historical records, the oldest records. We do have records of Africans and Phoenicians, Israelite people, and ancient people from China, from Europe. Eric the Red, Leif Erikson. We have records of people coming over here long before Hannibal, Hannibal and Hanno the Navigator. We got all of these records, but we don't have archaeological evidence, meaning that we don't have the ships, right? We don't have, but they do have those spearheads because I don't know whether we have them now, but we do have them. We did have them in history because there were a chemical testing done on them.
Right.
So we can't have this. We can't play this argument from ignorance that just because there's no evidence that the story is not so, because we do have the story, and the story is old and it is written down, and now that story is history. It's almost like the Georgia Gallstones, we was talking about the other week. When the Georgia Gallstones, they toe down now. In another 50 or 100 years, they may build a factory or a building over that place, and there will be no real evidence that that place was no archaeological evidence that that place ever even existed. That don't mean that it didn't exist. And therefore, we can't say these things for Abraham. We can't say these things for Adam and Eve. We can't say these things for God. Nor can we say these things about the Phoenicians not coming to America, because we're looking at this area right here where it's talking about the artifacts that were found. And all of these artifacts, they found writings in the Paraíba area of Brazil. And this is all of the areas where the colossal heads, the Olmec heads, all of the Semitic writings, all of the Phoenician writings, all of that stuff has been found there, and the dark-skinned people has been found there, but yet and still they want to keep dismissing this story, man.
Yeah.
They want to call Ivan Van Sertima with his ingenious work pseudoscience. And it's racist. It's racist. It's all to not give Africans, especially African Americans, their due, because what ended up happening is that America turns out to be Africa America.
Right.
America turns out to be African.
Yeah, technically. Ivan Van Sertima, man, a lot of people say that, he's just an Afrocentric and, that he's pseudo, which is, pretty disrespectful.
It's very disrespectful when you look at his work and you look at his evidence. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He does have evidence, and you just can't, even if you have the notes, the letters, the writings, those are archaeological. They're archaeological evidences. They're not anthropological, but they're archaeological. They are anthropological. They're archaeological, historical, and anthropological.
Yeah, they are. But people they like to bypass that and ignore that.
Yeah. I'm gonna read this one little paragraph, and I'm gonna go ahead on and just shut it on down. It says that the alleged artifacts that prove this is that in 1872, a stone inscribed with Phoenician writings was allegedly discovered in the Paraíba, Brazil, and it tells of a Phoenician ship which, due to a storm, was separated from a fleet sailing from Egypt around Africa. This is something. See, now we coming up with these writings now, and we looking at these writings right here. They call the lithographs of the Bot Creek inscription. You see, I mean, we look at it. We got Phoenician writings telling the story of Hannibal and them, being shipwrecked. But these people constantly saying that there's no evidence of this stuff. This is crazy. This is retarded. You know what I'm saying? This is like really retarded, man. You know, it says it tells of a Phoenician ship which, due to a storm, was separated from a fleet sailing from Egypt around Africa. It also mentions the Pharaoh Necho 1 and Necho 2 on these Phoenician inscriptions. So they go on all the way back. They go all the way back. They say a transcription was known. So this is going back before Hannibal. This is talking about a shipwrecks of Phoenicians being coming over here way before Hannibal. Way before Hannibal, way before Hanno, way before Abu Bakr. These were Phoenicians coming over here long time ago, like in the BC era. And we have it's a book by this man named Michael Bradley. It's called The Columbus Conspiracy. In that book, he have the writings of the ancient Greeks, which talked about how the Phoenicians, how the Greeks known long time ago, before any of us is trying to figure it out, that the Phoenicians, that the Canaanite people, that those people from Africa came here and discovered this part of the world. I want to finish this and I'll be done in 1 second. It says a transcription was shown to Ladislao de Sousa Melo Neto, director of the National Museum of Brazil. Neto first accepted the inscription as genuine, but by 1873, philologist Ernest Renan convinced him that it was a forgery. Its letter form vary from those that occurred and disappear over the span of 800 years. Some confluence in a single piece of writing implies that it was a forgery. No scholar ever saw the stone or located it its source. And during 1873 to 74, Nito tried and failed to find the individual who had supplied the copy of the inscription. In the 1860s, Cyrus G. Garden provided a new translation and stated the conclusion that it was genuine. Since I didn't copy any Semitic writing, it would have been widely accessible at the time. Frank Moore Cross disagreed, saying that everything in the description was available to the forger in the 19th century handbooks or from uninspired guesses based on these easily available sources, and claimed that the letters form cover a range of 10 centuries. Gordon also believed that ancient Hebrew inscriptions had been found at two sites in the southeastern United States, indicating that Jews arrived before Columbus. One of these supposed finds was that Bot Creek inscription, which Gordon believed to be Phoenician, but in generally thought to be a forgery. Another find, which he had claimed to be supporting the theory of Semitic discovery of America, is the Los Lunas Decalogue stone, which had been dismissed as a fake. The part is that these old stones, these people are dismissing them as fakes, but they're not having real good reasoning for doing so. But the answer to the question, did the Phoenicians discover America, or did Columbus discover America, or did the Romans? You got Romans, Egyptians. You have all type of theories that people came over here across the Atlantic before Columbus. And a lot of these theories are solid, man. I'm talking about, because they're not really theories. They rooted in ancient history, man. We just don't have no archaeological and much archaeological and anthropological evidence for it. But we does have a plethora of historical accounts, and they're valid. Yep. So now I'm open up for discussion. That being that, this is the Yasha Ben Israel show, and we just discovered that African Americans did not. I mean that Christopher Columbus did not discover America. We found out uh, that the Phoenicians have the oldest record of discovery, and the Greeks have the oldest documents. I'll do a part two, and you can look down into the comments and in the future description of these Greco records, because I don't have them on me right now. Or you can order the book from Michael Bradley, The Columbus Conspiracy. That book is an awesome, awesome book. We have Black Jesus Minister in the house. What's up, Black Jesus Minister? Yes, Black Jesus Minister. I have contacted Miss Marnichi, and I'm awaiting for her response. In fact, I contacted her as recently as yesterday. We want to get Sister Dana Marnichi over to the show.
Excuse me, Terry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta get back to work. I'll talk to you when I get off. All right.
All right, we'll see you. A good talking to you, Tori.
All right, peace.
All right. Yeah, so we had old Tori over here, came in, Black Jesus Minister, Brother Chop. We got the warrior for the most high power that came in with us. Yeah, so I want to get access to this book, and I want to read some portions of the book. I have actually have the book, but I can't find it. I can't find it nowhere. It has to be either in my mother's house, over at my house, or in one of my cars. And one of them cars so junky, it's going to take me hours to look through that. In fact, I clean that car out. I don't even drive it. But yeah, I want to get in contact with Sister Manichi. We'll have an awesome show over here. That is a scholar, man, that is impeccable, second to none. Y'all going over there to the Black Jesus show. You know what I'm saying? Y'all guys want to be entertained. Y'all want to be educated. Y'all want to have good dialogue. You want to be instilled with good morals. Go over there to the Black Jesus Minister show over there on YouTube. The brother gets it in. I'm here to tell you. But that being that, we've been going for 1 hour and 58 minutes, which is actually 1 hour and 59 minutes. And after 2 hour mark, we're going to end the show. That being stated, this is Brother Yasha Ben Israel coming to you from the Yasha Ben Israel show on YouTube, Yasha Ben Israel channel. Hit that like, hit that share, hit that subscribe. I'm trying to get 50,000 subscribers. That's really I want to get about 500,000, but my short-term goal is 50,000. I want to get 50,000 subscribers. That's my short-term goal. It seems like a far away goal, but would you believe last month I had 200 subscribers, 270 subscribers. Today I have 2,700 subscribers. And that's just a month later. So, I mean, I can get that 250,000. I want to get 250,000. That's my goal, 250,000. But that's my long-term goal. I can be comfortable and rest after 250,000 to 250,000 subscribers. But my goal is 50,000 subscribers. Hit that subscribe button. Please hit that subscribe button. I'm on a subscription campaign over here. And we're out of here. It's 2 hours.